Hey there, welcome back to Off the Beaten Couch. I'm Bonnie Adams, a licensed marriage and family therapist who specializes in helping families and individuals heal through their loved one's addiction. I hear from people, and I even experienced this myself. When you have a loved one who's struggling with addiction, we lose our sense of identity. We lose who we are because we're so wrapped up in what's happening with our loved one through their addiction. So today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how to maintain your own identity while supporting your loved one through addiction. If you've ever felt like your life has been consumed by your loved one's addiction, like their needs, their crisis, their recovery has become the center of your universe, and your life has become wrapped up in all of this chaos, trying to keep things stable and running smoothly while managing this chaos, you are not alone. It's easy to lose yourself in this chaos. But here's the truth. You deserve to take up space in your life. You deserve to have joys and passions and rituals that bring you fulfillment, even while loving somebody through addiction. So today we're going to talk about how you can start reclaiming your identity without guilt and without losing compassion for your loved one. Let's dive in. Why does losing ourselves happen? And why can it be dangerous? First, let's talk about why this happens, because it's important to understand that this isn't your fault. When you love someone in active addiction, it's easy to lose yourself through that entire process. Here's why. So you love somebody who's struggling with addiction. Survival mode kicks in. You're constantly managing crises, whether it's covering bills that were missed or staying up late at night, worrying about where they are, what they're doing, if they're safe. Your focus shifts entirely onto that person because addiction feels so urgent and overwhelming, and it is. There's always that worry that that call is going to come in the middle of the night, that you're going to be able to stop something from happening. Then there's guilt and shame. You might think things like, well, if I love them a little bit harder, then they would see that and that would help them stop using. And that guilt can make you put their needs above your own. There's also the shame that kicks in. And addiction is very isolating. So being ashamed of your loved one's addiction, we don't necessarily go out and talk about it with other people because of the shame, because of the stigma that surrounds it. Because if you're a parent of somebody who's struggling with addiction, then you fear that people are going to look at you like, well, what kind of parent were you? Or if it's your spouse, what kind of spouse are you? A brother or a sister or an uncle, an aunt, whatever it may be. Addiction brings stigma. And then we have society's narrative. And society tells us if you were a good partner, you would sacrifice, you would help them. They're going through something right now and they need your help. If you were a good parent, you sacrifice everything for your children. You make sure that they're safe, they're taken care of. A sibling, you may feel obligated to take care of your sibling if they're struggling with addiction and you know that they've had experienced trauma. Society pushes these narratives on us that if we were a good this, then we would be doing that. But losing yourself doesn't help them and it harms you. So here's an example. Let's say your partner relapses. So you cancel plans with friends, you skip therapy because you need to fix things. You're gonna be one step ahead of everything. You start neglecting hobbies that used to bring you joy, and over time, these sacrifices start piling up. And suddenly you don't recognize who you are anymore. So how do you start reclaiming your sense of self? I'm going to give you 5 things that you can do that will help you tap back into that part of you that makes you who you are. It'll help you remember who that person was before addiction entered the relationship. You don't have to do all of these at once. Start small and go from there. If you can devote 5, 10, 15 minutes a day to something that's just for you, then that's a perfect place to start. So maybe right now you want to grab a journal or a notebook or just a piece of paper. And the first thing that I want you to do is to name what you've lost. This is the first step to this awareness, is to take a moment to reflect on what parts of yourself that have been set aside to make room for addiction. You can ask yourself questions like, what did I love doing before addiction entered this relationship? What parts of myself feel neglected right now? And maybe what was one ritual that really brought me joy that I've set aside to make room for this addiction? Maybe you loved painting but haven't picked up a brush in years because there's always something urgent that you have to take care of right in that moment. Maybe you used to spend weekends hiking or volunteering outside of this relationship, and now you spend that time managing crises instead. Writing these things down helps to remind you who you are outside of this relationship. And you might even discover a few new ones. What are some things that you have been wanting to try that you've been putting off? Number 2, set non-negotiables. So set aside time. I will spend 30 minutes every single day writing in my journal, reading a book, relaxing, listening to music, dancing, something that brings you back to you. I will not cancel my appointments, my classes, things I had set aside time for to manage crises. So maybe somebody calls you and asks you for help during a time that you had allotted for maybe a yoga class or a pottery class, or the time you set aside for reading or dancing or listening to music. Rather than dropping everything, instead say, I'd love to help you after my class, after I'm done doing this, after I'm done reading, when I've finished this thing. This lets people know, and it also lets you know, and it reaffirms for yourself that you care about them and your needs matter too. Number 3, reconnect with your anchor activities. Anchor activities are things that ground you in who you are. These are your hobbies, your passions, your rituals, and they remind you of what makes life meaningful to you. So maybe that's cooking meals that bring you joy without rushing through them to manage stress or interruptions. Or it could be listening to music that sparks happiness or nostalgia while journaling about how it makes you feel. You could join a local book club or another class where the focus is on you and your interests. Finding something to do that isn't revolving around the addiction. Number 4, build a support system that's just yours. It's so important to have people in your corner for you, not just for your loved one's struggles, but a community that is built around your growth. These could be friends, family members, your therapist, online communities, people that are interested in you and who you are becoming and allowing yourself to be. So what you can do is identify 2 to 3 people or groups who can be part of your support system. You can join an Al-Anon or a Nar-Anon, or find a smart recovery for families where others understand what it's like to love somebody who's struggling with addiction and where the focus is on healing yourself. You can reach out to an old friend and say something like, I'm going through a tough time right now and I would really like to talk to somebody who can listen without judgment. Do you have time? Number 5, values exploration. This is going to be how you can formulate your boundaries as well, but explore the things about your life and you that you value. Find something every day, once a week, whatever it is that you value, and really hone in on that. How can you value that day? What can you do to honor your value and live within the bounds of your authenticity? If you value relationships, how can you express that value in your relationships, especially the relationship you have with yourself? So doing this repeatedly and every day, something super quick in the morning. Today, I am going to explore my value of healthy eating. It sounds like repetition, but repetition rewires guilt. It rewires you away from the guilt. It's moving you into a space where you're honoring who you are and giving yourself space to be who you are, giving yourself permission to take up space. You start doing things for yourself and people start noticing, and you're going to get a little bit of pushback from your addicted loved one. They're going to feel you pulling that energy away from them and putting it onto yourself. And they're not going to like it. And they're going to feel maybe a little bit abandoned or a little bit forgotten. And they're going to give you some pushback. They're going to give you a difficult time. And they might say things like, you're being very selfish right now. If you say, well, I have this thing that I'm doing and I'm glad to help you afterwards. They might say things like, if you loved me, you would focus on me. I need your attention right now. And while they may need your attention, that doesn't mean that you have to give it over. You can say things like, I love you deeply, and I can't help either of us if I'm running on empty. Taking care of myself doesn't mean I care about you less. It means I'm showing up as my best self. Remember that boundaries are acts of love for both yourself and them. So here's the beautiful thing about reclaiming yourself. It doesn't just help you, it can inspire change in your loved one as well. When they see you prioritizing your self-care and living fully outside of their addiction, it shows them what healthy living looks like. Someone shared a story with me one time how she had begun to take a pottery class and she was bringing home all of her creations and showing her partner. And over time, her partner started to get curious about what she was making and eventually joined her at an art workshop where he was able to make some pottery as well. And they ended up reconnecting through this pottery class. They ended up sharing a love for making pottery together and supporting each other, making these beautiful creations. So reclaiming yourself isn't selfish. It creates space for growth in both you and your addicted loved one. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this episode, it's this. You are allowed to be a full person with dreams, passions, and joy, even if your loved one is struggling with addiction. Their addiction does not get to write the full story of you. You do. This week, I challenge you to take one small step toward reclaiming yourself. Text a friend, dig out an old hobby, or simply ask yourself, what do I need today? And even if you do nothing with that question, you just acknowledge it. You just give yourself permission to ask, what do I need today? That small step is going to lead you in the direction of reclaiming yourself and remembering who you are outside of your loved one's addiction. Thank you for being here today. You matter deeply as an individual, not just as someone who's supporting another person through addiction. See you next time.